First off, what is app.json? We refer to it as the manifest file. You guys probably understand that. That's our manifest. That's the file that's going to be loaded as soon as your app gets up and going. And it does a few things. The first thing it does is it helps command figure out exactly where to put stuff. How's it going to build your application, where things are going to go, what stuff should it do, what stuff shouldn't it do. It also helps configure the microloader. So this is allowing the microloader to flip things on and off, like local storage caching, or how it handles your assets. And it also allows you to filter out assets. Like, I don't want an asset to show up on iOS, or I only want an asset to show up when I'm loading it, in a Windows machine or something like that. You can set your own custom configuration properties, so you can put a custom object inside your manifest file. And then from here, via ext.manifest, you can go ahead and grab that custom information. This would be a good spot for maybe like API keys for some third-party service or something. You can keep it all in your manifest file, refer to it later. So the first block we're going to look at in app.json is the JS array. I imagine everyone who had their hand up for familiarity with this file understands this property. What the JS block is allowing you to do is essentially determine what JavaScript files are going to be loaded into your application. Fairly simple. This is just a quick example of two, but we're going to look at all the possible properties that can go in for a JavaScript asset. Obviously, path is a very important one. You're going to tell us what file you'd like us to include. Bundle and include in bundle have been the headaches of many, and exactly what that does is the bundle true, they never should both be on for one file. So bundle of true is essentially saying, I want you to take all this stuff and bundle it into this file. So if it's called app.js, that's going to become the bundle. That's the entry point for the bundle. Include in bundle works with that. So if you're marked for include in bundle, you're going to get put into the bundles file. Obviously, if you didn't set a bundle and you put something include in bundle, you're going to be sad about the outcome of that. Platform works with our new platform tags, and we're going to talk a little bit about platform tags here and how they work and how you can use them for all sorts of cool environmental detection and stuff like that. But essentially in this one, if we just left it at iOS, we're essentially filtering an asset so that it only shows up on iOS. So please only load this asset in iOS environments. Bootstrap allows you to determine whether something is only there for development. So if you have it set to true, that JavaScript file will only be loaded when you're in dev. As soon as you build, it's going to get stripped out, never loaded, never in the manifest, gone. Updating is our local storage updating system, and we're going to spend a whole demo at the end looking at how the local storage system works and how you can cache things for offline mode and run your apps offline if you're on a mobile device. Or not, I guess, if you're not on a mobile device, any offline mode. And the update flag can take, two different properties. It could be full or delta. We now support delta patching in both classic and modern, so you'll be able to delta patch your files. If you leave it off, the file doesn't participate in local storage caching and will be loaded remotely from the server every single time your app opens. Remote is a little tricky one. Most people just describe it as, it's a remote file. I'm going to load it later. Well, command actually does some interesting things. If the remote flag is on and the path is relative, so if it's a relative path to your application, command will copy that file for you into the build. So it does still copy the file into the build. It just won't process it or do anything fancy to it, and it'll load when your app loads up. If the remote path is a URL of some kind, we do nothing. We don't obviously copy that. That would just be loaded remotely. And if the file doesn't exist locally, we don't copy anything in there either. So you're either injecting it in there later or some kind of madness. The next block's very similar to JS is CSS. And we don't have to spend too much time. A lot of these assets or a lot of these properties are the same as a JavaScript asset. So if you look through the list, path, bootstrap, platform, update, remote, these are all actually the same kind of deal. You can filter out a CSS asset on a platform, multiple platforms, whatever you'd like to do. So we're going to talk specifically about this platform part. Here are the magic platform tags that you get out of the box from ext. So you will get all of this stuff, so you can detect whether you're on a phone or tablet, desktop, if you're on any of these various devices, if it supports touch, if you're in some of these browsers. But platform tags are not just these. You can add platform tags if you like. You can change platform tags if you'd like to suddenly tell us this isn't a phone. You can do that, and we'll deal with that. To use platform tags, to actually take action and change them, we use the before load method. Now, you guys have probably seen this in a couple other demos, and if you look at the starter app that we generate in EX6, you're going to see a commented section for this. Universal app will actually be using this, and we'll look at this a little later exactly, but just to step through, the top chunk here is your custom code. Whatever it is you'd like to do to figure out which one of these manifest files you'd like us to load up. So if you have a multi-build, you want a desktop build and a mobile build, and they're built out to separate, you need to tell us which one of those you'd like us to load. And this custom code is how you figure it out. This is ripped right out of the Universal app, the starter app. And you can see we're just checking query parameters. If the word classic is up there, then you probably wanted the classic profile. If modern's up there, we'll take that. And then we use this tags.desktop down here. So in the else statement, I should have highlighted it with something. I think I got a cool laser pointer. Yeah, all right. So right there, that's using that platform tag. So that was auto-detected by the framework that'll be true or false. And essentially what we're saying is, all right, if you're on the desktop, load up classic. Otherwise, switch over to modern. So if you're on a tablet or something else. And then that build profile gets put right down in here into ext.manifest. And then the world is happy from there on. Here, your passed-in tags, back to the laser pointer. So your passed-in tags here, and if you modify that or add to that or delete stuff from it, that will flow through the whole framework. So that would fall through. So if you said tags.phone equals true, everybody in the world is going to think you're on a phone, no matter what. You can also use this to add custom platform tags, whatever you'd like. So maybe I want to flag debugging. We recommend prefixing your custom tags with a UX, just so they don't clash with any possible platform tags we end up making in the future. In the fashion demo, I'm not 100% sure if Phil showed this, but you can also flip fashion on via the before load instead of in a query parameter. So if you wanted to see fashion running, you could do it in the before load. To actually use these, you can use them in platform config. So in any class that you create, you make a platform config and desktop and not desktop. So the keys of this object are the platform config. So when you're on a desktop, the title is going to be this. And when you're not on a desktop, it's going to be that short title. And it's pretty cool because you can put expressions in there. So we can evaluate stuff. It's not just keys, which is pretty fun. You can also obviously use it in JavaScript. So if you wanted to make a choice on what you were going to create, something you were going to do, ext.platform tags will have everything your heart desires for that. So you can dig into there. And it's right there in the code. So I highlighted that one for some reason. All right, so switching back to app.json, we're taking a look at resources. This one's pretty simple. Essentially, if you want any resources to come along in your build, just give us the names, the paths in here. So example here is if I had custom-data in the root of my project, that would get brought into my builds also. You guys know this. All right, so we're going to take a look at the environmental properties. These three are merged in to the root of app.json during a build. So when you do a production build, any properties that you have inside the production object will get merged up into the main level of the built manifest for that. So in this case, development isn't a build. We don't build that, but when you're in the development environment, we'd be loading up some development styles. And when we actually have an app up and running, I'll show you guys some of the stuff that we use this for. Sass is a pretty important one to know, but again, it's probably not one that you'll be in tweaking. The namespace being the most important, and this is how we match up your Sass files with your source files. So if you have an application with app.view.main.js, we need to know where to match sas.view.main. And this is how we match it up, is via this namespace that tells us, it defaults to your app name, but if you left it blank, then it would be one level up, and you could then style something like ext.component or something like that if you wanted to. You could go in and start doing that. But we leave it in the app space, imagining that your styles will live in your app and you won't be out there monkeying with everything else. But you have the options here. The etc folders allow you to choose SAS that's going to be compiled first and foremost, so maybe a third-party library or something like that. You can point it there, and all that will get brought into your CSS in the end. And var and source work similarly. Tell us where the variables are and tell us where your source are. Var always comes first. We'll go through all the variables first. Once we're done with that, we'll go to the source and start processing components, actual goodness in there. The loader property is pretty helpful, and it really only has two pieces to it. We'll talk about cache parameter first, even though it's on the bottom. Obviously, this is just a query parameter, so you can put in whatever you want in there. You can call it, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And in the cache object, you can tell us what you'd like the cache buster to be. So if I typed a word in there, it would become _DC equals that word for every asset that I ever make. And we're defaulting it here to an ant expansion property. So whenever we do a build, it's going to stick the timestamp in there. So every build will get a fresh copy of every asset. But if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to use something else, you could. And if you set it to true, then you're essentially telling us that you'd like to allow cached assets. So we'll never cache bus anything. And all of your assets will always be pulled fresh. If you set it to false, we will append some kind of random number to it, so it'll always come over the network. We'll never cache anything. So true, false, or a value is essentially how that one works. Locales are, pretty much what you'd imagine. You probably have used locales in your applications. For every build in your application, it will build a locale. So if you have 4 builds, build A and build B, you'll get a AEN and an AHE and then a BEN and a BHE. You'll get a build for each locale. And you can make overrides and things like that based on a locale. This just helps. This is in the build process. Oh boy, questions already? Is it a really good question? Can you come up to the microphone then? All right. Better be really good. Because this next part was my favorite part, and you kind of spoiled it.
So how do you handle the case where you have a language where, depending on what country you're in, things like date formats could change? So, for example, our date format for English in the US is different from the date format in English in the UK.
Right. And are you saying you don't want to do that through separate builds and overrides? You want to still have one app and then kind of just tweak it?
Sort of. We have a case where our locales are stored somewhere other than our JavaScript.
Okay.
We have like a locale server.
Well, the JavaScript needs to know somehow that you want to change something. If you wanted it to just be one build, even a platform tag or something might be worth sticking on there. We need some kind of switch to know which one to use. Otherwise, you just make another locale build, so en-something and en-something else, and then override your formatters with something else. Does that kind of help?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a pretty good question. All right. Theme isn't my favorite. I don't really care much for it. It's pretty simple. You just tell us the theme package you want to use, one thing. So we just move on past this guy. There's a bunch more to theme packages, but we're not going to dive too much into theme packages, but this is how you set it. Toolkit's brand new to X6, and it's fairly simple. You just tell us which toolkit you'd like to use, so classic or modern. And then there are 2 top-level keys that you can use. So classic and modern are restricted, so don't go thinking you can use those for your own custom stuff. Inside of classic, anything you put in there is going to get merged up for any classic build. So if you have 8 builds, 4 modern and 4 classic, every classic toolkit build will get the classic properties, and every modern toolkit build will get the modern properties. We just found a lot of the time we were repeating a lot of the same stuff in our build configs, and then these became a nice, handy place to clean things up. So you'll have access to those. Output is extremely important, and pretty much you can think of the output object as communicating with command. Command really uses the output object, and the manifest, the microloader, never really talks to the output object. It's actually stripped out by the time the microloader gets to it. So for the output object, base is going to determine where all your files are going to go for this build. And this output object that we're looking at right now is a multi-build application. So what we've done is imagine, say we have a build called Android and another build called iOS. Those bits are going to end up in workspace directory, production, my app, Android, my app, iOS. But we'd like for the index file to live one level up from that so that we can go, so we'll go to that page, and then via that before load property I was showing you guys earlier, you would tell us which build profile you'd like to use. So before load will hit, you'll say, I'd like to use Android because platform tags.android is true, and then we'll load up the Android JSON, and then your app will go down that path. So that is why page is up one level, and also why the manifests are up one level. So manifests live right next to the index file, then there'll be a bunch of folders for each one of your builds. That's how kind of the basic multi-build app is set up. If you weren't doing a multi-build app, you would probably just build to, you'd probably strip build.id off the base, get rid of page, get rid of manifest, and you just build into one folder. Wouldn't be any problem. Application cache is the HTML5 application cache manifest, and the Microloader and X5 fully support this, and we will look at how that's used in the caching demo. We have two caching mechanisms. This is how you turn on HTML5 application cache. The other caching mechanism is our local storage caching, and we'll talk about the differences and why you'd want to use one over the other. Here's a quick look at those builds I was talking about. So we have our desktop build, we have our iOS build, and our robot build. So we're going to build 3 different builds. These are your build profile names. So that's what that ext.manifest was expecting in the before load function that we made. So you would tell it, in this case, robot, if you wanted it to load up that Mountain View theme on modern. And you could tell it desktop if you wanted to load up crisp. So inside each one of these blocks, again, it's an open area to write whatever you wanted as far as properties. So if you wanted to, you could put a CSS property in there or a JavaScript in there, and it will get merged up into the top. So you could say, well, for this desktop build, I want this special resource copied over by just adding a resources block into there. Here is our cache. This is our local storage caching. So this is how you turn that on and off. You can globally turn it on and off now. So if anyone's familiar with touch, you would be sad if you wanted to globally turn it on and off. You couldn't do that. And the final piece here is where we store your deltas. So for delta patching, we need a folder where you'd like us to find your deltas. This is used by command and the microloader to figure out where that is. So this is turn on off. In the demo, we're going to go through exactly this. So this is going to be the demo piece. All right, looking at my clock, it's still ticking, so not done yet. So that was app configuration. We're going to switch over here in the microloader and look through the demo. The microloader, obviously very important. Every app you ever make will use the microloader now in X6, so you can't get away from it. And the first thing is it loads all your files, so that's handy. Probably want that. It's going to load your JavaScript and your CSS assets. It's also going to filter them, so this is how we manage which assets get loaded on what platforms and your tags get applied. Hey now. All right, that was a phone. For those on the internet wondering why I just stopped and said hey now. Local storage caching is all handled through the microloader, and it will do full and delta patching. And we'll talk about the differences there, and we'll actually take a look at what that means as far as file size to just do a delta patch versus, even on the most simple starter app like we have, it's a considerable savings to delta patch. And it also monitors the HTML5 app cache, which will allow it to trigger app updates. So you will know in your application when there's an update to your application. So there's a new version in the manifest, there's some new files, there's an update to the HTML5 manifest. Something has updated and you need to tell the user, let's get on it and get on the latest version. So here's a breakdown of the application load. This is probably the most useful thing. So made you guys wait through this whole thing, and then there's something useful. Here it is. So the application load breakdown goes like this. Imagine someone goes to a browser and types in your magical URL to your application. They hit the button and it loads up. The first thing that happens is the browser is going to check the app cache. It's going to say, hey, is anything here local on the device or the desktop, whatever you're on? And it'll try to load that first. So most often this is your index file. Index.html is cached by the browser. Got it. Never had to make a request to the server. And then in the background, app cache is going off and checking for updates and doing its magic that it does. But now we have index.html file, so the first thing we can do is check our before load, which you wrote customly. And you tell us the manifest file that you want, and you inject any of those fancy platform tags that you wanted to inject. All this stuff happens at this point. We then load the manifest, so the microloader kicks in, loads the manifest, and it's going to check for local storage. If it's not there, it's going to go grab it from the internet. It'll do the same for your assets. So it's going to flip through your assets and look for any assets that are cached. Are those in local storage? All right, let's grab those. Otherwise, let's go get stuff remotely, and it goes through and gets all that. Fires off the application ready. So this is where your launch function runs, your app is visual, everything's up and running. So technically, if you had cached all your important assets, like your CSS and your JavaScript bundle, and you had app cache going for your index file, we're up and running at this point without ever touching the internet. We've never reached out to the internet because everything was local and cached on the phone. So while your app is running and you're off doing amazing things, the microloader goes to check the actual manifest. So it loaded a manifest from local storage. Now it needs to go check the remote manifest. So this actually only happens if you're online. So it checks, hey, are we online? All right, let's get going. If we're not online, let's wait until we get online, and then we'll go do this. So it's going to go figure that out, goes, grabs the manifest. Is anything in here new? If it is, it's going to cache all that stuff. It's going to hold on to everything that's new, and it's going to inform the app that we have new stuff. And this is kind of an important point to understand. The application is up and running. The user is using your application from local storage. But there is newer bits that you want them to have. And they may be in the middle of doing something. So we need to ask them what you would like to do. Do you want to finish doing what you're doing? Should we save whatever it is you're working on? Get that done, but then you should reload the app because we have new stuff for you. And that's really where this comes in. And you have control over this. This app update is fired back on your application. And we'll see exactly how it's fired in the demo, which is right now. All right. So I have, oh boy. Oh man. All right. So this is a modern test app. So just scaffold it up from command 6, just like you guys have seen. This will work on a classic test app also. And you guys have probably seen this a million times already. But real quick, we'll just talk about app.json that we went over. As we flip down through this, we could see obviously it's using the modern toolkit. It's using the Neptune theme. Requires we didn't talk about too much. It's kind of a whole separate world, but this is how you'd bring in packages. If anyone's worked with packages, you're probably pretty familiar with the requires block. Here's the Sass block. You'll notice that it grabbed the name of my app automatically during the generation. All these comments just to see this little JS file right here. That's my bundle. Here are those classic and modern toolkit blocks that I had told you guys about. Obviously, classic's going to get ignored as this is a modern-only app that I've generated, but you'll see this JavaScript file is going to get injected here for modern. Don't look at the CSS. This whole property is actually changing. We're working on making this a little cleaner. So right now it's got this ant expansion in there, and that's actually not going to be the way that it's going to work in the long run for ext6. See, we have caching turned off by default because you're probably not going to want caching while you're developing. If anyone has ever been stuck in that trap where you're developing and you can't figure out why that change doesn't happen, you probably got that turned on. This is probably the most important part. We're going to look at how production and testing are used inside the sample app. You can see here when a production build is fired off, we want application cache turned on. We want the loader to use the timestamp, and we want our local storage caching turned on too. But in testing, we don't want any of that stuff. And you can see how easy it is for us to manipulate these variables in different environments now. For us, production, especially if we're doing any delta patching, a production build is serious business. When I make a production build, all my files get delta patched. Everything gets versioned. That's a serious step right there. And you don't want to just be firing off these delta patches willy-nilly or whatever you'd say. Step by those. Output, you can see this is a single app, so we don't have multiple builds. So as I mentioned, there's just no build ID on the end, and we're just spitting everything out into an app folder. App cache is off by default. Local storage cache off by default. Here's where you can actually configure the HTML5 cache manifest. So if you'd like to add your own entries to get cached by the browser instead of our local storage, you can add those in here. Resources is empty. We're not doing anything with that, but as I mentioned, those are just extra resources. We have regex here to ignore certain files completely. This archive folder is also pretty important. You'll want to pay attention to this if you're doing delta patching. This is where your versions are going to go of your application. So by default, this is going to end up in your build folder, and you'll want to be aware of where this archive is, because if you trash it, we can't delta patch anything. So we need to know old versions in order to delta patch new versions. So be careful with the archive folder. Don't just trash it if you're doing delta patching. Slicer won't be used here in the modern toolkit, but this is these are the properties that would get applied to the slicer when they get loaded up. There's a whole space block that we didn't talk about, kind of out of scope of this talk, but this is how you'd configure the space builds. And here's how you configure the regular builds. This ID down here is also very important. If you're going to change it, just know that you're actually changing the ID of your application. Whole application becomes new application to us as far as we're concerned. So that's just a quick run through, just to kind of reiterate everything that we looked at earlier and see it in practice. What we're interested in here, though, is the caching system. So what I'm going to do is we're going to scroll down to this JavaScript file. And we're going to go ahead and set this to update delta. So I'd like this JavaScript file to get delta updates. And for those, I'm pretty sure everyone's with me, but a delta patch is going to just send across the information it needs to change the file. So maybe you've just changed a couple words. Well, we're going to just send across those couple words and information on where to put them, and you'll be able to patch the file. Versus full, which means just download the whole file again and store it to local storage. You could choose either one, but we'll see why delta patching is pretty handy. All right, so we've set this to delta, and now we're going to switch into, actually, oh boy. Here we are. We're going to go ahead and open the terminal, and we're going to go ahead and do Sencha app build production. Production. Yeah, that's how you spell things. Do it. All right, so obviously this is building, production build for us. Everyone's seen this process probably. It's fun to watch. All right, this will be done in a second, and I'm going to switch tabs over to a new tab. I'm going to go into my build folder, into my production folder, into my modern folder. So this is the app that it just built. We're going to go ahead up Sencha Web Start. It's going to go ahead and give us a server running on 1841, which means I need Chrome so I can enjoy this page I've just made. We're going to fire that up. All right, so there's the app running. You see the application cache went out and got index.html. We can take a look at this really quick. Inside the build, production, test modern, it generated the cache manifest. That was command who made this for us. And it also injected it here into the index.html file so it knows we want to use that. By default, index.html will be cached just by virtue of having this link. So even if it wasn't listed in here, you don't really have much of a choice with index.html. It's going to get cached. So again, you can add stuff to this however you want. Maybe you want to cache some fonts or things like that, but simple enough in there. And if we look in the archive right here, there's nothing yet. So nothing has been put in here for, because this is the first build we've done, so we have no need to archive anything yet. So nothing should be set up for that. No Delta patching either yet. So we have this all going, and if we take a look in our network requests, oh, actually, I should have had this open because we can't see them, but trust me, all the files were loaded remotely. They came from, my server. If we reload this page, you're going to notice that app.js was, can you guys even see that? Is that like a seeable thing? No? Yeah, that's working out well for me. Let's make that a little bigger. Is that better? Yeah. All right, so you'll notice that app.js was never even loaded remotely. It never came across. And that's because, better keep that actually big. Here in our resources, in local storage, we have our JSON. What? There should be more stuff in here, so this is sadly a sore point in my demo. See what I did wrong. Yeah, that's not right. So sorry, guys. Normally what you would see in here, and every single other time I've ever done this, app.js is in here and it's cached into local storage. Did it have it back here? How in the heck did you get in there? Not supposed to. What in the world is going on? Yeah, I swear I did a production build. I'm pretty sure did I run this out of the production folder? Yeah, I'm running this out of the production folder. You suck, computer. This computer just doesn't know. Well, this is the kind of stuff that you get when you do a live demo. Thanks for that, Ross. Great idea. Who decided to do this? Well, I'm going to try to do this again and make sure that I have everything set right. So this is set to Delta update. We're bundling it. That should be fine. In our production builds, like everything else, our cache is turned on. We did this build. I mean, we can do it again, I guess. We're going to do a clean build here and just make sure this is running right. Don't think I did a build or anything weird with this prior, but we're going to run some clearing and we're going to try this out again. So, sorry guys. This is the life of me. All right, so we got that going. Just double check. Where are we? Yeah, build production. Sent your web start. Oh boy. Are you serious? Wait a minute. Huh. That warning was peculiar. All right. So let's see what goes on this time. Cross your fingers, hope and pray. What shows up? Hey, there we go. All right. That's what's supposed to happen. So now in here, we see that app.js, a little too big, has been cached inside of local storage. So next time we run this, again, hoping and praying that this all goes right. Awesome. Yes, app.js is not in the list because it's been loaded from local storage, and everybody's happy. And if we had just also maybe cached the CSS file and maybe put the web font into app cache, we'd pretty much have an offline app at this point, so everything would just run offline. In order to see the difference here, if I were to, and I'm tempting the gods here with this one, we're going to go make another live change and do something else, but let's do it. We're crazy people. There we go. So I'm going to change this to new, it's just some change to my application. Hop back in here. Whoa, don't do that. Yeah, that would be sad. All right, let's actually just do a regular production build this time. And we'll take a look at what it generates. If you're on the web, there was no mistake. Sure they edited it just right. I mean, there's no editing. Everything's been great here. Everything's under control. So after this has been built, if we take a look inside here, we're going to see there's an archive for the two versions that we've built, the first one and the second one. And then inside app.js, here's the Delta patch for app.js. You see it's very small, single line of code. All right? And if we hop out here and we take a look at what we're talking about. So obviously, I think it's pretty fair to say that this is 83 bytes. And I mean, do we even bother doing this comparison? But if we look in the archive and we look in here, and oh boy, everything's falling apart. That's 800 bytes. So I'm going to argue that it's probably better to just send the Delta patch over and let that come through. So the Delta patch will come through. So let's look at that process. What's going to happen here? So when we reload, you notice that app.json, even though it's in local storage, keeps getting loaded. And that's not because we're loading it to start your app. That's because we're loading it to see if there's any updates, anything new in the actual remote app.json. And there is. The hashes have changed inside there. And we can take a peek in there really quick. But you can see what we've done is we've essentially presented the user with this warning, like, hey, we have new bits for you. If you want the latest, hit yes, we're going to reload the app. You can finish what you're doing and hit no, though, if you want to. Just next time you open the app, it's going to be brand new. So if we go ahead and hit yes right now, cross your fingers, yeah, the header changes to new, which is great. So that worked. And that's how Delta patching works. And now in local storage, that local copy has been updated. And you could switch these all you want. You could switch back and forth if you wanted to do Delta to full updates or however you wanted to do those. And again, just so you guys can see, inside the generated app.json here at the very end, you know what, maybe I can even pretty this up. We'll scroll down. This hash rate here is actually generated on the content of your application and the content of the manifest. So this is going to be unique per actual content. Same thing is actually done to each asset. So the hash is generated based on the content of the asset. So it's going to be unique every time you change something or do something. And that's how we're able to check if things are different. So if you actually wanted to do a quick test in the browser just to see, if you went into your resources for app.json and you went to the end here to the hash that we're looking at and you changed it to something else, just added a number to it, when you reload this, it's going to think there's an update because those hashes are different. And you can hit yes and go through that. Obviously, we didn't actually change any assets, but the hash is what we use to determine those things. So hopefully that's a really, not extremely boring explanation of all this stuff. And you guys have learned like 2 things. I'm hoping for at least 2. So we'll open it up. If anyone's got any questions, let me know. And that's about all I got for that. Anybody? Oh, yeah, we got questions.
Actually, I have 2 questions.
Oh.
The first one is related to the editor, the app.json you just opened. Can you open it up again?
I just got to my slide.
The generated
put
one.
Up the Q&A slide. Okay, let's take a look at that.
Okay,
this one
so
right here.
In this generated app.json file,
yes,
there are some additional information that might be sensitive, like the last path we can see. How we can get rid of those?
That might be sensitive?
Well, this is part of the ext manifest.
Yes.
So if the user types in the console ext.manifest, it shows that you generated the app everywhere over the world. So
sure.
How can you?
What would you like to take out of it?
Well, I don't want to see that user / your username desktop, test modern, and so on, because it's not necessary information. Have you ever seen that?
Well, it shouldn't be like this. Oh, you're saying these 2 paths in here that got stuck in here.
Yes.
Those probably shouldn't be relative paths like that are getting stuck in there. And I would imagine they shouldn't be like that when we actually finish. I noticed they're only seeming to be happening in our modern and classic pieces. Are you seeing those in other things? Like things getting stuck in your manifest that are saying information that you just didn't want in there?
Well, as you mentioned, we use the app.json to add additional configurations, such as API keys. But if we type ext.manifest, we can see this, and it shows the build servers.
A bunch of that stuff gets stripped out now. So when we build the manifest, we strip out a bunch of information. I think this one is getting not stripped out. Obviously, we would need this path to load something. So this is a path that we're trying to load. But in other cases, your build paths, things that command is only using and not the manifest, those should be stripped out. They shouldn't be in there. But obviously anything that's in here that the manifest needs, I mean, we need to be able to, anybody would be able to see that anyway. Even if we put it somewhere else or hid it,
so the only way to get rid of those to take care of after the build somehow and clear.
Yeah, if there is something stuck in there, but again, yeah, command strips out a whole bunch of tags.
I mean that one is in the build.
Yeah, this one's in the build because I don't think these files exist, so there's no relative paths, so they never got brought into the build folder, so it had to put in the full path to my file. But normally I wouldn't have a file like this even included in the first place.
Okay, the second question is, what's the plan with the sencha.config file in the .sencha folder? As far as I know, sencha is moving the variables and the configuration into the app.json file, but there are some variables are still confusing where to go, where to put, which overrides which one.
Fair enough, and that will be confusing for a little bit as we move. But the idea is to move over to app.json where you're configuring everything in JSON. There are going to be some configs in the Ant world for a little while we try to get them all moved over. But yeah, the goal is to get everything in app.json.
How sencha command process these variables? Reads the sencha config first and then overrides with the app.json, or the opposite?
app.json would win for sure, and it's actually backwards because in Ant everything is backwards.
Okay.
Yeah, first come first serve in Ant, which is hilarious to me, but.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next.
Hey. Chrome's about to introduce an extension that includes a JavaScript pre-compilation cache.
Okie dokie.
Up to 40% improvement in performance for JavaScript applications.
Sounds great.
Is this compatible with that?
I have no idea. I haven't looked into that system. Is it completely separate from application cache?
I have no idea how it works. It was just...
Well,
I'm not from Google.
I am pretty sure the two of us should not be having this discussion, but I guarantee you that information's on the internet. That sounds awesome, and I'll definitely look into what's going on there. Obviously, the downside would be it's going to be Chrome only, so we're probably going to have to do some specialty stuff, but we can understand that maybe some people are only delivering in Chrome. I guess if you're going through space, maybe you'd want to take that.
I don't care who I deliver to. I just want to make sure it's compatible.
Now I got it. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Is there any exposure in the Microloader to the JetBrains plugin?
No, we don't have any of that information. I mean, as far as like the Microloader feeding or getting fed something from the plugin?
Or just like configuring it, like if the JetBrains plugin is smart enough to kind of look through the code or look through the themes or the profiles and kind of auto-populate a little
That is a
mini
great
list.
question, not for me. I'm not sure if they're smart. Oh, so you're talking app config, so not the Microloader, the app.json file.
Or just in general, yeah, just the configuration.
This configuration?
Yeah.
That's a question for the plugin guy. It would be awesome if he did do that.
Is that his last name too, Guy?
Yeah,
first name
plugin dash guy at Sencha.
Gotcha.
I think he'll
It's
get
French.
you to him.
It's-
Check
okay.
for him. I wonder, are you here? That would be, okay, good.
Plugin
Don't watch
guy.
this video.
I got a question about locales. So let's say I have
About
five
what?
locales.
Okay,
So let's say I have 5 languages and I have a desktop and a mobile build. That's 10 builds.
it sure is.
And our builds right now, we have over 300 or 400 XJS classes, so it takes from 30 to 45 seconds. So what's the good way to scale that? I mean,
To scale it even higher?
No, I mean, by scale it, I mean, I don't want to wait for, whatever, 10 builds times 30 seconds for, during my CI integration build, for example.
The best way to speed that up, I don't know if I have a great answer. I mean, we are redoing the builds. I don't think Command has any optimizations in there for checking the existing build and trying to help you make these things faster. Fashion is going to make it all faster, and that's what I'm supposed to say. But no, realistically, I don't know. You have what? How many? You said you have 30 total. Then how many builds are happening total?
So
10?
I've just five languages and 2 different builds.
Yeah,
for
so
example,
10 builds.
just
So it's taking you 5 minutes a shot every time you do a build.
Yeah. And then if we add more
Yeah.
languages, it just keeps growing. That's.
We do this ourselves. I mean, even in ours. So the kitchen sink has 2 languages, and it has, I think, 8 different builds.
Okay.
And our tools take just as long. So I'm almost positive that if there was a better way, someone would have changed it to that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. You can call me. I'll come do some builds on my computer.
Hi. Is it possible to package a native app and load the deltas from another URL? So to decrease the App Store wait review times. It's
an
kind of
interesting
hacking,
question.
but
I don't know if Apple would let you do that.
we won't do that during your review.
You're doing it
time.
anyway?
No,
Then let's do it.
We start submitting deltas after review.
Yeah, so if you're patching your file inside anyway, and Apple hasn't kicked you out, I don't believe that would be a problem. The Delta patches are loaded locally though in the microloaders, so no, we don't have a way for you to set that path to be remote, but that's not a bad idea. I wonder what that would do. I think the use case for it never really came up because we just kind of assumed we'd get kicked out of the stores. But yeah, usually if you're doing native packaging, you're updating your store presence with some kind of notes and things like that. So we're just kind of used to that process. But that's not a bad idea. If
Yeah, because you could use it
legal.
for some quick fixes and
Sure, that's what we all want to do, right? Yeah, it's just a quick fix. We don't want to deal with Apple's week-long process. So I see where you're going.
okay, thank you.
I don't know if they'll be on the same page with us. It may work for like 3 or 4 updates, and then all of a sudden it just disappears from the store. You just never know. Not to scare you.
You've never seen my name.
Yeah, it'll be there. It's good. I promise.
Hey.
Hi.
I have a question about static linking. Like, it looks like from version 5, it's really hard to make a build without microloader. Like, microloader should be loaded first and then everything else. What we tried to do, we tried to link everything in one package. And it actually doesn't work well with XDirect interface. Like with XDirect API, because it's supposed to be loaded separately, and it looks like it's supposed to be loaded somewhere in the middle after a library, but before application.
And this is in X5?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you for sure a lot of that's changed moving forward. The command is actually organizing a lot of those things now and generating a load order for all of your classes. So you're essentially saying something's getting loaded out of order?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that would have happened in 5. I don't think it would carry over into command 6.
It's not exactly out of order. It's basically because of the dependencies. Because XDirect interface is supposed to be linked to X namespace, but X namespace just doesn't exist at this point because library is supposed to be loaded before it. It's a kind of a strange problem.
I would wonder if it still exists. I know a lot of time has been spent in reordering how we load classes. That would be a question that you may want to throw past Kevin on the command team and see if he's run into this. I mean, I'm sure someone's used a similar thing, and you could ask him.
And one more question.
Yeah.
What is like maybe you did some tests, performed some tests. What is the performance impact of using dynamic loading mechanism?
Versus just putting them all in script tags
Yes.
and sticking them up. I haven't done tests.
You don't know.
I haven't. It's better. I don't know. All right. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Oh, wait. What do you want?
I'm way too lazy to go up there. Right now, we have to sequentially go. So we only have one build for all our languages. We snip the browser language, and we Ajax in a resource bundle.
Okay.
For different languages. But that means that I have to hack it before launch, so my labels will be available.
Okay.
So, is there any way in the before load that we can handle the fallback?
To halt, to essentially stop loading. Yeah, we've talked about this. I think the easiest way to manage that, there's 2. You could steal Microloader's run function. That's one way you could do it, is actually ext.microloader.run. You could steal that and hold on to it and then call it later when you're done with your things. Or the other way would be to have your script run first and not even inject the microloader into the page until you're done doing what you're doing, if that makes sense. Because you're going to be are you doing your own custom detection too to figure out which one of these things to load?
Yeah, we're doing that within an X class right now.
Within an X class.
Yeah, but I'd rather keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, well, you're going to move something into before load. So I think you could, yeah, like I said, you could take over the microloader's run function and then not run it until you're ready to run it. Just essentially grab onto it. It's definitely not a easy config thing that we've planned, but it's something we're aware of, and it's not something that we've like missed. We want to probably provide a better way for people to halt that process and do asynchronous things. What's that? How about them? Thumbs up. I don't really know what you're looking for. There's no promises in the name of my title. What are we doing here? I don't know nothing about no promises. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking if you're just asking for my opinion, but we could talk about promises later if you want. We don't use them, if that's what you're saying. Are you going to ask me another question? Yeah.
Not really a question, just a
what?
note. When regarding updating an application, a package application with Delta Update,
Yeah.
I don't think that Apple will have anything against it because they allow updating web applications, and in a sense, it's what you do with the Sencha client application. You always
true.
update the apps that are in there. So this would be quite an interesting option.
Yeah.
Perhaps you want to look at it as
That's
a feature
fair.
request.
I agree. That's a good idea. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Anybody else hiding out there that was too lazy to get up and come to the microphone? All right, guys, thank you.